Hello everybody, we just got finished watching the third episode of the Hell's Paradise Jigokuraku anime, and being that we got done watching it, I want to talk about it, and that's what I'm going to do. So, like I said, this is the third episode of the Hell's Paradise Jigokuraku anime. The episode is actually titled Strength and Weakness, as we'll see sort of strength and weakness come up between Sagiri and Gabimaru's relationship in this episode. And also, this episode covers the rest of Volume 1 of the manga, right? It covers chapters 3 through 6, and it covers them nearly perfectly. There is not really any point in this where I'm like, oh man, they could have done that better, or anything. This is a really faithful adaptation for Hell's Paradise right now, and to be honest, I'm really happy about that. So, just to hop into all the episode details and what's going on here, we start off with an explanation of pretty much the chief of Igakaware village. That's of course the village that Gabimaru comes from, and we pretty much understand that he is nearly unkillable, right? He is really strong and he's got a whole lot going for him, and pretty much Gabimaru makes a note that he's immortal, and there was a legend a long time ago that he took a medicine from a long way across the sea, and that is what made him such invincible, right? At this point, we cut over to Gabimaru and Sagiri getting on to the Hell's Paradise Island itself, right? Shinseikyo. So they get there, and Gabimaru's like, I'm guessing by your expression and everything, you actually didn't think that this place existed, right? And also that this cure-all existed either, right? But he's just like, it definitely does, and he calls it the, let's see if I'm not mistaken, let me scrub through the episode, he's like, the Tokuji no Kumuni, right, the elixir of life. At this point, we get the opening of the episode of work. Of course, this is by Millennium Parade and Ringo Shina. Over time, I'm really starting to like this opening more. Definitely the first few times I heard it, I was like, do I really like that? But definitely as time's going on here, I'm definitely enjoying it more and more with each listen I give it. So from the opening, we then cut back to Gabimaru and Sagiri here on the island, as pretty much we see that Sagiri's just like, she's just in disbelief of this place as she's walking around. She's like, oh man, what's everything going on here? As Gabimaru ends up walking through, and he's just like, man, yeah, you definitely wouldn't believe there's an elixir of life around here. And he's just like, this place is creepy as can be. As he goes and he breaks his bonds that are keeping his hand tied. And all of a sudden, Sagiri freaks out, just like, what are you doing, right? And Sagiri's just like, don't do that, right? It's the Shogun's will for you to keep your hands tied while we're here on this island. And don't forget, I will kill you if you disobey this order, right? And she's like, I cannot overlook any attempt for you to try to break the rules at all during any of this, right? And she gives Gabimaru more rope. She's like, can't you let this slide, right? And he's like, but here's the thing. I know you want me to keep my hands tied, but this isn't like the only ridiculous thing about the expedition, right? We've only been given 5 days of food and the simple drawing of the elixir of life to try to find this thing. As we see that this drawing is sort of like a weird looking fruit that I guess grows on a tree or something, and that is the elixir of life they're trying to find. And Gabimaru makes a little note of, they're not actually trying to have us find this elixir, are they? Because if they are, you would think they would try to put a bit more detail into actually figuring out stuff about this. As they keep going on more, and Sagiri eventually pulls out her swords and puts it up to Gabimaru's neck. It's like, keep your hand tied at all times, right? I'm not dealing with this. I'm the executioner, and I don't care. I will kill you if need be, right? He's like, until you find that elixir, you are not pardoned, and that's how it is. And Gabimaru eventually just gives in and keeps his hand tied. And as he's tying him, all of a sudden, a wrecking ball sort of just comes over and smacks into Gabimaru. As we see it, this is one of the other warriors. It is Twisted Queen, who is being looked over by Yamada Simon Kisho, and pretty much Twisted Queen is just like, you fool, not paying attention on this island, what do you think you're doing? And all of a sudden, Sagiri's just like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Is my prisoner dead? But Gaimaru sort of gets up and he's just like, man, that sucked. I dislocated my neck. I should have been paying a bit more attention here. And Sagiri's just like, what's going on with this dude? As she sort of goes into a profile of who Twisted Kuin is, right? Pretty much he's a warrior monk who went around feudal Japan, and he pretty much fell in love with weapons during his training, so he collects them and kills like a bunch of stuff, right? And Sagiri's just like, oh man, so here's the backstory, and Gaimaru's like, well, that doesn't really matter right now. I mean, it does matter, but what's really on is he just tried to kill me, right? As we see Kisho's here, right? Kisho's got some purple hair to him, and he's just going through here, and he's just like, man, you can't be bothered to argue with us, can't you, Sagiri? Just like, it's stupid, just don't go on about this. And we get a little bit of an interesting note here. So apparently the Yamada Asaimon are ranked. I don't really know how they are ranked. I mean, we know that there are 10 on this island, so I don't know if they're ranked here, but as we'll go through later on in the series, we're going to meet some more Yamada Asaimon, so these 10 aren't obviously the only 10 that we know of. And to be honest, as far as I know, this ranking is never really brought up again in Jigokuraku, so it's just a little interesting note here. But we pretty much learned that Sagiri is the lowest ranked Yamada Asaimon just because she's honest to a fault. And we pretty much get here and she's like, hey, that's not time for this discussion, as Twisted Kuin is just like, hey, Gabimaru the Hollow, Gorano Gabimaru, right? He's like, how dare you ignore me? As he goes through and he's like, man, you're almost as bold and stalwart as the rumors say, right? As he pulls out a weapon and he's just like, your blood will be great to rubble my weapons here, right? And Gaimaru's just like, here's like, if we waste time fighting this dude, yours are going to give a head start on it, right? And Twisted Kuin's just like, well, yeah, exactly. What else are we supposed to do? I'm going to kill everybody so I can have as much time on this island as I need so I don't have to worry about dealing with everybody else here. As we see, he's like, and Gaimaru, you're first. I'm going to kill you. And he's like, so just get ready to watch. As we pretty much see that Kisho is just standing here, and Sagiri sort of confronts him. He's like, hey, are you going to do anything about this? And at this point, she notices that Twisted Kuin's hands aren't tied either. And Kisho's just like, hey, it's his problem, not mine. If push comes to shove, I can tie his hands back on the boat. As Sagiri also goes to Gaimaru and is like, hey, tie your hands too, right? I don't care, your hands will be tied during all of this. And Gaimaru is like, you're kidding, right? As there's a little fight here between Kuin and Gabimaru. As we're just going through, Gaimaru ties his hands and just gets absolutely beat on by Kuin. And Kuin's just like, I shall test all my weapons against you. As, like I said, it's just a pure brawl between the two. And Gaimaru sort of makes a little note of, man, it's hard to fight with my hands tied. As we see that some attacks get traded and everything, and Gaimaru grabs one of Twisted Kuin's swords and pretty much smashes him in his chest with it. And we see that Kuin has literally sewn in his armor to his skin to make him a more tougher opponent, right? And Kuin gets back up and he's just like, alright, it's time to get started, Gaimaru. As we just cut. And we cut to as soon as Gaimaru has completely killed Kuin, right? We see he's here with all of his weapons literally sticking out of him, right? And Gabimaru is just like, man, that sucked, but hey, Sagiri, look, my hands are still tied, right? Don't need to worry about all that here. And then Kisho comes over and he's just like, he pulls out a sword and he just cuts off Kuin's head. He's just like, hey, well, thanks Sagiri, thanks Gabimaru for killing my guy now. Right now you can go back to the mainland and not have to worry about being on this island, right? It's really nice, thanks you for doing that, right? And Gaimaru is walking here like, so we don't need to fight? And he's just like, no, my prisoner is dead, so I don't really care, to be honest with you, right? And as he's leaving, Sagiri's just like, hey, Kisho, be safe on your way out, right? He's like, we know how many people have disappeared on this island. You may be Yamada Simon and you may be strong, but just don't die out there, right? As Kisho's just like, hey, I consider myself lucky for getting off of this island so quick, right? You just may think you're naive if you think just because he has his hands tied, but here's the thing. This entire place is going to change. The dynamic between everybody is going to change. It won't be long, right? And he says, mere moments after we left this place, there's so much is going to happen. Everybody's going to reduce their numbers. Everybody's going to try to plot and work together. As we get a lot of flashbacks of this dude Azachobe pretty much getting choked out by Hyogoro here. We see that Yuzuriha and one of these other people are pretty much making a deal with each other. The Sword Dragon is here. Him and his partner are walking off. And we see that one of the Yamada Saimon and one of the lady prisoners is coming over. And the lady prisoner tries to seduce the Yamada Saimon here. And we just see all of these images of what's going on elsewhere in the island, as Kisho's pretty much saying, we've got to realize these people are criminals, right? They're going to do whatever they can to get ahead. It's not going to be long till everything is just so screwed. And Kisho's like, so Sagiri, if you think you're safe on this island, you need to let Gaimaro keep his hands untied, because we're all going to die if he sort of can't actually fight. He's like, we need to get the Shogun back. We need to get the Elixir to Shogun. And does it really matter if we break a few rules here on the island to ensure that we don't come back empty-handed? As he's pretty much just like, we want to sort of pass this test instead of fail and come back with nothing, right? And he pretty much just says, like, well, if you don't want to deal with this, so I just need to cut down Gaimaro now. And Gaimaro's like, hey, let's not waste time on pointless jokes here, right? And he's just like, I just want to get back to my wife. I don't care about anything else. As Gaimara's like, alright, Sagiri, let's get going. We need to find this thing. And right as they're leaving, Kisho just sort of speaks up, and he's just like, hey, here's the thing. Allow me to make a small prediction. Pretty much in a few hours, the situation on this island will change again. Everything will be different. As we cut to Aizen, who is one of the people who we saw mainly focused on last episode with big time with Sagiri. And we see that they're here, and they're speaking with their prisoner, Rokuda, and we see that Rokuda gets close to Aizen and ends up killing Aizen instantly, right? As Kisho sort of talks more, guys, like, in a few hours, an unpredictable turn will occur, right? More than half the criminals will die, and in less than a day, there will only be one criminal left. As we pretty much see a bunch of things. So Azachobe ended up killing the monk priest dude who was choking him out earlier, right? The woman is completely dead on the ground, right? Her neck has been just cut off. The one dude who's with Yuzuriha is dead, and we sort of see that Yuzuriha may be too. And Kisho's just like, you guys, you criminals are expendable. It doesn't matter. More people will be sent here, right? And he even talks to Gabimaru about how some people were sent to Igakaware to let him know about this going on here, right? And he also says something to Sagiri about how the Saimon aren't really all they're meant to be either. That the person who makes it off this island and gets the thing, the elixir of life, may actually be the next Shogun. Or not Shogun, the next leader of the Yamada Saimon. And Kishi starts to walk away, right? And he's just like, alright, well, time for me to go. I'll see you guys later. As all of a sudden, Sagiri's like, you know what, he's right. I actually don't know what Gabimaru's true nature is, right? And she's like, hey, which way now, Gabimaru? She looks to Gabimaru, and he is all of a sudden disappeared. And we cut back to her, and he's right behind her, pulling out a blade and starting to clash swords. And that's where we get the first break of the episode. So after the break here, we all of a sudden cut to Gabimaru as a young child. And this sort of comes up out of nowhere, but we pretty much see how Gabimaru's parents died. They were two ninja in the village of Igakaware who pretty much had a kid, Gabimaru, and wanted to leave the village. Thus, the chief of Igakaware pretty much came up, killed both of them, and said that he would raise Gabimaru on his own, and he sort of gives a lot speech here of, unless you're strong, you can't protect anything. And as we see this, he's like, and you can't protect anything, and we see that Gabimaru sort of thinks of his wife, right? At this point, Sagiri and Gabimaru are clashing, and I have to say, this is really beautifully animated. And throughout the rest of this scene, with the conflict between Gabimaru and Sagiri, not only is it very well animated, but also the voice acting and the music is on par with some other great scenes in manga and anime. And it's definitely not holding back anything. So as the fight goes on, we sort of see how Gabimaru and everybody is reacting to this, and so pretty much eventually Sagiri is just like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And she's like, are you really trying to kill me? And Gabimaru's like, hey, here's the thing, there's no other choice I can really do, as they keep on fighting. Sagiri's like, I need to execute him immediately. He's so strong, and there's no way I can really win this. But she's like, for some reason, I'm hesitant. I don't think I can really kill him. As we switch over to Gabimaru's point of view, as he's getting up to Sagiri, and he's just like, he goes to make a fatal blow, and he's just like, I should be able to kill her right then. Why am I hesitating? What's going on? As we cut back to Gabimaru again, flashback time with his wife, and his wife is just like, hey, you're not hollow, right? And Gabimaru's like, but I am. She's like, whenever I kiss you for the first time, you blush so much, you truly can't be that hollow, right? And she's just like, if you have emotions, you should really listen to them, right? They're what they are. You shouldn't give up on them. And she sort of makes an idea of true courage is also being true to your emotions, right? And Gabimaru sort of has this idea of, I have experienced so many emotions after being my wife, right? Which is like, one of them was hatred. As we see whenever he was on a ninja detail mission, they're going to search for a target, and Gabimaru ended up killing this one guy just because he threatened his wife and his entire family, right? And Gabimaru was like, I'm not dealing with that, right? You see Gabimaru's trying to kill another guy here, and the guy's like, hey, wait, I can't die, I've got a wife and children. And Gabimaru sort of stops in his tracks, and all of a sudden, he lets the sword this guy's using get stuck in him, and it sort of just breaks off, right? And all of a sudden, Gabimaru just kills him, and is just like, well, I've experienced weakness as well, just like that dude did. We cut back to the present, where the fight is still going on between the two, and as they keep trying to fight each other and kill each other to the death, right? We see that Gabimaru sort of just like getting enraged as he thinks of the captain of the Gakuwara is like, unless you're strong, you can't protect anything, as he swings the sword that he's using, and it completely shatters Sagiri's blade. And then Sagiri pulls out her sheath to start using as a fight, and Gabimaru's like, you can't beat me with that, you're skilled enough to know this by a mile, right? He's just like, I don't care about killing the other criminals, but I think killing you will hurt me. And Sagiri's just like, it'll hurt you, right? And he's just like, so you still have some of those emotions left? And Gabimaru's like, yeah, I guess you're not wrong. As all of a sudden, we cut to Sagiri on the ground, and Gabimaru kneeling on top of her, right? Getting ready to plunge a sword in her throat, showing that she has obviously lost this, right? And we see Gabimaru is like, I don't have emotions, I can kill her. As we see this really cool frame here, and it'll probably be in the thumbnail for this video, but where Gabimaru is just like completely black, and we get his face. He's just like, I am Gabimaru Hollow, and it looks really cool, right? And he's just like, I've killed so many people, I've gotten tired of it, and just killing one more person won't make me feel bad. It was just how I was raised. As we see that the village chief sort of appears in a vistage on Gabimaru's shoulder, right? And Gabimaru's like, unless you're strong, you can't protect anything. As he gets ready to plunge the sword in, and Secret's like, oh crap, this guy is really dangerous, what am I going to do? As Gabimaru starts to plunge the sword down, but he can't. And we see that his wife is now sort of appearing on him too, sort of holding Gabimaru back as the vestige of the chief of the Gakuwara is slowly going away. And Gabimaru's like, why am I hesitating? I shouldn't feel anything. What's going on here? And Sagiri's like, that's right, that's how it should be. And she sort of thinks, she's like, in that moment, whenever he kills, Gabimaru always wears the same anguished expression. He doesn't want to do it, but the environment he was raised in really screwed him up. And she's just like, he is a human being with emotions. And she's sort of thinking, like, he was the person who was able to let me think through my emotions too, right? And Gabimaru, like, still can't punch down his sword. He's like, is this how weak I've become, that I just can't do this anymore? And at this point, Gabimaru continues, like, at this rate, I won't survive this island. He's like, if I'm this weak, I'll never see my wife again. As Sagiri's just like, no, stop stop talking about that. That's not weakness. As she grabs this sheath and starts to slide onto the blade, and she's just like, it's a true seed of strength, right? Feeling nothing is same as averting your gaze. She's like, believe it or not, your emotion is strength right now. As we cut back to Garamar thinking about that whole idea of true courage is being true to your emotions. And she's like, at least allow me to say that. And she's like, after all, I was able to face my own emotions tied to you. It's Garamara's still doing here. It's like, but I can't. And she's just like, your hands aren't moving and your hands aren't bound. I'll overlook your behavior, right? I won't execute you immediately. But if you regret your own crimes, face your emotions, and struggle to reclaim your life, then I want to see you do that, Gabimaru, right? And she sort of thinks, like, show me someone like you can reclaim your life, right? And she's like, I must face my own emotions as well so that I can become stronger, and that's what you need to do. And she's like, our relationship hasn't changed. I'm still the executioner. You are still the criminal. But you're not your old self anymore, as the blade sort of clicks onto itself as it's sort of done, right? There's no more conflict really between the two of them. At this point, we cut over to another Yamada Simon and criminal pair. These two are Yamada Simon Fuchi and Tamimaya Gan Tetsusai. Pretty much the Blade Dragon, and we don't learn it now, because at the beginning of this episode, I sort of said that this covers everything in those chapters, but we do skip a little bit where Fuchi and the Sword Dragon Gan Tetsusai are talking. And in that, we sort of learned that Fuchi is like a biological sort of dude, right? He likes to mess with bodies and stuff. And pretty much what's going on with Gan Tetsusai. But pretty much what we see here is they're walking through and they find this really weird area of statues, a bunch of like Buddhist-related things. And all of a sudden, there's a fly that's got a man's head that comes and lies on Tamaya's hand. And all of a sudden, a scab starts to form on it, and Gan Tetsusai just cuts his own hand off, right? And Fuji's like, what are you doing here? As we see that, he's just like, it's a butterfly with a human face, right? And he's like, we don't need to get distracted, as we see his hand is turning into a tree, and sort of plants and all of that. And we see, like, these CGI bugs come crawling out, and a bunch of weird stuff, as Fuji's like, this is weird. And Gan Tetsusai is like, this is starting to get interesting, what's going on here? As we see this sort of massive sort of creature that stands probably 100 feet tall, and it's pretty much got an open mouth, its tongue is hanging out, and for its eyes, it's got two hands that are pushing out of its face. It's really weird looking, right? And Gan Tetsusai is like, man, that's really interesting and weird. As we cut over to Sagiri and Gabimaru, who are sort of facing with the same thing, right? A bunch of bugs are dead on the ground, and in front of them is like this fish standing up with 6 arms, with prayer beads around each of the arms as its hands are in a praying formation. And Sagiri's like, what is this creature here? And at this point, we get the ending, which is Kamahate by Uryu, and that's the end of the episode. So this is definitely a really good episode of Hell's Paradise. Definitely has a lot of fun and interesting stuff in it. You've got the whole stuff with Kisho at the beginning and how the dynamic on the island will change. But what's really the best part about this episode is really just everything between Sagiri and Gabimaru and everything they do. It's really just the best part of this episode by far. And that's all I really have to say, right? It's just a really good scene. The music is on point. The voice acting is on its own key. And Mappa can do some really good sword fighting animations, and about everything else they do, I don't really know if I agree with. But with that, if you enjoyed this video, sorry for getting it out like a few weeks late. I know we're already, episode 5 is already broadcasted, but yeah. With that being said, I don't really have a whole lot more to say about Hell's Paradise episode 3. Again, this was called Strength and Weakness. And I'll see you next time, again, with Hell's Paradise Jigokuraku episode 4. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you like about this episode and everything, and what I can do to personally improve. And yeah, this is going to be Glowplasma231 out.